Okay, welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be talking about the modifications I've done to this Tilta MBT12 Mattebox. So the first and easiest mod that I did to this Mattebox was to 3D print a back plug for it that just clamps in position and keeps the inside of the Mattebox clean. This is just a 3D printed disc. It weighs next to nothing because it's mostly hollow, and then it's got two thumb grooves so you can actually grab it easier. It was an easy first mod for the Mattebox, and it greatly reduced the amount of dust getting into the Mattebox and sticking to the filter, which is the next modification. I made a filter holder for this 132mm clear filter. This filter is originally a round filter, and I got it secondhand for very cheap, and it's in really good condition, so I figured why not use it and put it in the Mattebox as a permanent fixture to protect the lenses. And so I made a slot-in holder for it, which basically clamps the circular filter between two bits of plastic, and the two bits of plastic are screwed together, holding the filter there in place between them. And then those two bits of 3D printed plastic are the thickness of two slots on this Mattebox, which is necessary. The filter was actually thicker than one slot, and then I've still got one slot for effects filters if I want to. But usually I'm not really putting effects filters in this because I'm doing more verite documentary style work. All I really need in the filter box is a clear filter to protect the lenses I use, as they typically have quite large front elements and are usually unable to have screw-on filters screwed onto the front. So from stock, this is a 134mm clamp-on Mattebox. So that's going to clamp onto basically any lens that I have. The only one that comes close is my Canon HJ Cine lens, which is 130 or 132mm. This Mattebox is basically required to be so large to clamp onto those really large front element zoom lenses. So the clear filter mod was a pretty easy one. I made it a really tight fit so it doesn't fall out. And yeah, it just kind of lives in the Mattebox. And then that back plug to the Mattebox, when the Mattebox is not on a camera, it just keeps that filter nice and clean so dust isn't falling into the Mattebox or anything like that. In addition to all that, I printed a bunch of adapter rings, which are basically donuts with a little bit of a split on one side and a hole in the middle that adapts the larger Mattebox clamp-on diameter to a smaller lens size. So a lot of my zooms do have a small lens front diameter for clamp-on Matteboxes. 3D printing those donuts with a split on the side so they can compress just allows me to use some smaller front diameter lenses with this Mattebox as well. And they cost next to nothing to print off a custom sizing. So this really thin slip spacer that I'm installing there is for the Canon HJ21. Because it's such a large front element and such a large front diameter, it doesn't really need much of a spacer, but it just needs this little thin spacer for it to be able to be clamped on. Next in the way of modifications, I made this smaller carbon fiber top flag. That's because the original top flag, which you can see me mucking around with here, it pokes out the sides of the Mattebox when it is down as a lens protector for the Mattebox. So it pokes out the sides and makes the Mattebox much larger and affects the overall width of the camera package. And those little wings out the side can get caught on things, and you don't really want that. So I made this custom sized carbon fiber top flag, which is just out of a sheet of carbon fiber I had. So I cut it out with a grinder. Unfortunately, I chipped a few edges on it, so it's not in the best condition, but perfectly functional. Carved that out to the right size, and I painted the inside surface of it matte black to avoid reflections because it's a gloss twill carbon fiber, so I didn't want all those reflections from the gloss on it reflecting into the lens. Because it has the same geometry for the mounting clamps as the original one, it can just swap in. And because I sized it to be perfectly the size of the front opening of the Mattebox, when it's closed on the Mattebox, it doesn't protrude out the sides to catch on anything. And that's been a good addition to this Mattebox as well. As great and adaptable as this Mattebox is, and it is really nice to use, it is a fair bit heavier than what you'd usually use with a broadcast lens. You'd usually just have a rubber lens shade. So when I saw that the appropriately sized lens shade for the Canon HJ21 was still available, brand new, I bought one of those, and now that's what I use for the Canon HJ, as I can use 132mm screw-on filters with the rubberized broadcast lens shade. Here you can see me fitting the Mattebox up with that slip adapter ring so that I can clamp on to the HJ21 by 7.5. For my on-the-shoulder, handheld, and moving around a lot type of work, the much lighter rubber lens shade ended up being a lot nicer to use. Particularly because this lens itself is very front heavy. It's got a large optical group at the front, putting a lot of the weight at the front of your camera. So adding the Mattebox with all its aluminium parts and all that sort of thing just added to that extra front heavy weight. If you had one of these lenses and required a Mattebox for it, I would recommend doing the clamp-on option. Or if you were going to use this as a broadcast style lens and were after a rubber front lens shade, this one is particularly nice. The rubber lens shade also comes off and leaves the clamp-on ring with the filter threads. If you wanted to go super low profile on that, you can easily remove the rubber and just clamp on the filter threads to the lens. Particularly useful if you're doing macro work and don't want the lens shade casting a shadow on that. So yeah, that's just some information on how I'm protecting the front element of this lens, as well as shading the front element as well. Some different options I've done. So these modifications I made to my Mattebox maybe 9-10 months ago, and the mods have worked really well for the last 9 to 10 months. So yeah, I hope you found this interesting, informative, got something out of it. I know it's particularly hard to find information on how to use clamp-on Matteboxes with these larger lenses and how to use filtration with these larger lenses. So hopefully that inspired you to make some modifications of your own parts. It's actually a really good thing to do and really good thing to learn, because sometimes you need that bespoke equipment to fit that niche use that something off the shelf doesn't really fit. So it can be useful to learn and try this sorts of things. And in future videos I'm going to go over more of these modification parts for different things, different camera parts that I've made, as I've actually made quite a number of 3D printed parts for the camera over the last year and a bit. As always though, consider the material you're using and if it's going to be appropriate for what you're actually doing. So I release videos pretty sporadically, there's no sort of schedule to this, just when I have time. So if you did want to see more videos from this channel, I recommend hitting the subscribe button, maybe hitting the bell next to it and choosing if you'd like to be notified. That way you can actually know when my future videos pop up, as I'm not sort of releasing them every week or fortnight. It could be a month between them, sort of thing. There's no actual schedule to this, so definitely hit the subscribe button and potentially choose a notification type if you want to see more of these videos in your feed. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button, just helps get this video out to more people, and leave any comments down below. Have you 3D printed some camera parts or camera mods? I'd love to know. Or what do you think about these camera parts? I was a naysayer for a long time, but when you use the appropriate plastic material and design the part appropriately for relatively low use or low stress parts, it can be a really good material and process to use for these sorts of things. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.